All right, guys, today we were talking about 9R versus Boost. Who's the 9R for? Who's the Boost for? Which one are we riding? Which one should you go with? We're going to dig into all of that in this episode of Let's Assess.
Look, I don't want to talk. How you try and press the kid and really you was soft.
All right, guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Let's Assess. AJ's back on the pod, and we're going to get into the 9R versus Boost debate. It's going all around the internet with 9R being fairly new. So we are going to jump into it and kind of just give our thoughts.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Glad to be back on. Missed a week last week from a hunting trip, but we're back here going. And yeah, we're going to discuss the 9R and Boost. I know I'm going to be riding Boost this winter. I decided to go Boost because in where we ride at elevation, we are generally 8,000 plus or more. And I feel like riding a Boost over naturally aspirated on those deep days, you're always going to get that consistent power delivery versus, you know, in a sled, you lose that power coming to elevation, and we ride so high here where we ride.
Yeah, so there's a couple things going on, in my opinion. One, and we'll dive into a second who I think the 9R is for. But to begin, I guess we're talking about kind of what we're doing. I'm going to be riding a Boost. Obviously, the elevation adds to the favoritism of the Boost, but it's not only that. It's like we ride really dry, bottomless snow here. We need a lot of power. And then, you know, some days we'll get up to, 10,000, 11,000 feet, which obviously is cutting that naturally aspirated sled power considerably every 1,000 feet you go up. And then on top of that, I would just throw in like the style of riding that I like to do. I like to have my skis in the air. I like to have something that's kind of, I don't know if you'd say unfunctional, but something that's just like, I don't really care about keeping my skis down. I'm not a guy that wants to ride trees all day anyway. So to me, a Boost is just a no-brainer. It makes bow ties more fun. Obviously there's drawbacks to a Boost. It's heavier. It's not as good at jumping or whatever. But for me, there's so many pros to the Boost that I'm going to be riding a Boost again. And I'll tell you the biggest reason why I like to ride a Boost is literally just for the fun factor. I ride to have fun. I don't ride to pull the gnarliest lines. I mean, that's part of having fun, but my goal out there is to just like have a smile on my face the entire day. And so a Boost does a huge service to me when it comes, in the fun department.
Yeah, well, and I think you still pull those gnarly lines just like in a different way. When you got to look at it kind of from our aspect of what we're doing, we don't want to influence you off of what we're doing, but when we're filming, for the YouTube and stuff, it's an open spot to where you have to make the sled be the primary, like what's going on in the video. So you're doing something on an open hillside, that way you can shoot it with a camera. We're not in tight trees. We're not pulling sweet lines up a hill with trees, because once again, obviously by this, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell like we care about what the visual looks like, and you can't get good visual off a GoPro running through the trees. It's just not.
It's not as entertaining.
Exactly. Yeah. So we shoot in big open open hillsides and stuff like that. And that's where we can get most of our content. So,
and it's just more bang for your buck on the content side. It's like, if you're in thick trees, you might have one run at something, and we do film in trees here and there. Yeah. But, a percentage of our content is in the trees, and we ride a lot of trees. Being where we live, there's really trees pretty much everywhere.
We have to ride trees.
Yeah, we have to ride trees.
Yeah.
And I like tree riding. Everyone in the comments is like, God, why don't you like tree riding? It's like, I like tree riding, but it's just for filming. He's talking about like an open hillside, we can have 50 attempts and, get a lot of content off one open hillside and have, the filmer on the side of the hill and down below versus like, maybe get one or two hits in a tight tree spot. So we'll do that sometimes, but not near as much as just more open stuff.
Yeah. It just makes it difficult for the side that we're doing. And that doesn't make a 9R not good for what we're doing. Obviously, I have an NA sled in my fleet as well. It still does the same thing just as well. It's just I feel like riding the Boost, we get a lot more pop out of it with that. It's just a substantial more amount of power for the price aspect. And that's, we kind of get into that now. Like, I don't feel like a 9R is worth the money being only $1,600 cheaper than a Boost. I want to push the power that the Boost supplies us for what we want to do versus, $1,600 cheaper for just an NA sled.
Yeah. Yeah. The price thing is a huge deal for me. It's like you get to the 9R, you're let's be real, you're close to the cost of a Boost. And for me, I love power. I love to mess around with the power, different tunes, stuff like that. And on a 9R, it's like you have to spend a quite substantial amount of money to get what still isn't really to a Boost level. So with a Boost, you can tune and do these things that for us on somewhat of a budget, you can achieve a ton of power without completely breaking the bank. Like that tune that I was running last year, it's considerably less than $2,000 to jump up. Like, I think that's 40 horse more.
Yeah, as I say, you're like a 220, 225 horsepower sled for under $2,000.
But that's a ton. That's a ton of more power, and it's better low end, everything like that. And dare do I say it, dude, I don't know. In my opinion, that tuned, it may not be as strong as a 9R, but dude, it is close. And you gain so much more on the top end that, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. It's worth it.
It really is. And you gain so much on the bottom end with the tune, and you gain so much in the mid-range. I feel like your sled was very rideable in the trees, and then it still was the fun factor in the meadows, on the hillsides, whatever. Like the fun factor was there with that sled, and you didn't lose anything in the trees. I didn't feel. But that's our situation and our snow conditions and everything. Now, kind of to fight for the 9R guys, like, it's a great sled. They did a good job with it. It's a big bore. And for the guy that isn't spend a lot of the time in the trees or just really wants that low end grunt. And I mean, when I talk about that low end grunt, really you're only gaining, I think personally, that initial, like, probably 500 RPM, 500 to 1,000 RPM, that initial jump. Like, that's what you're gaining with the 900 over a Boost. And what I think. Yeah,
I don't know. This, to me, the only way I would build a 9R, like we were just talking about, is if I was riding 5,000 feet or less. I think maybe 6,000 feet or less. But like for us, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And around here, you talk to guys and they're like, "No, I'm a tree rider, bro. Like 9R is away from me." I'm like, then all the power to you. Great for you. But like, for me, I can do more things in the trees with the Boost that I was riding last year than I ever could with the 9R. I can pull better lines. I can pull re-entries in steep trees. I can do all that on a Boost. You have to ride it a little bit different, but I just don't feel like the fun factor's there for the 9R. The 9R is, I'm not downplaying the 9R. I mean, I know a lot of people are swearing by it right now, but I just think that for the money, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, and that's what I think it breaks it down to, is it's like the money aspect for us. It's hard for us to talk highly of it when it's so much more than an 850, but just a smidge less than the Boost. It just doesn't make sense for us where we're at. And just like you said, for those guys that are 6,000 foot and lower, maybe that is the weapon for you guys, but it just doesn't seem like the bang for the buck is there for it when, I mean, honestly, I'd much rather pull a reentry in the trees even on a Boost, having that much power, knowing I have plenty of power to rip that thing over and backwards, than banking on that 900 having enough in the snow conditions. Because if you're in the trees, it's going to be deep. It's going to be, soft snow most likely, especially where we're at. And I know last year from experience riding the 850 146 was sometimes it was not enough to even pop a reentry in the trees because I would just run out of enough, not really enough power, but it couldn't do it, where the Boost will kind of like hop itself out because you're so much more powered, like boom, right there, that Boost hits. Right. But I don't think with the 900, that low end grunt is enough to get you out of the snow to do it in the trees. Now, if you're maybe just pulling sweet lines in the trees, I think the 900 is probably the sled for you, because you do get that little low end, like in the, popping through them. But once again, maybe I'm not, and I feel like I can ride trees quite well, but I don't go through the trees that fast to make that money worth it for me. I don't think.
So let's dive into, like, I'm rambling here. Let's dive into kind of the pros and cons. So what would you say the top couple pros of the Boost are?
I'd say the top pros are, for the money of having a factory Boost sled, that just, like, number one, to put it as a bullet point, would be the amount of power that you get for the price. Second would be the amount of power for the weight. And then third would be, I think, just the usable power that it gives you.
I would add to that elevation.
Yeah.
Like, that's the biggest pro to me with the Boost. It's like, even on the Ski-Doo side of things, when they made that turbo that just compensated for elevation, that yellow sled, dude, that was a complete, like, that was a game changer. Yeah, just 3 pounds of boost.
To keep factory, 165 horsepower at whatever elevation up to, I think it was 8,000 feet or whatever they guaranteed. Like, that was noticeable. That was a big deal.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That was a big deal. So for us, I mean, Colorado, you can ride up to what, 13,000 feet?
Yeah, probably pretty easy. I mean, it's easy for us to hit 12. Like, where we're at, it's easy for us to hit 12 very, very easily. I mean, I know a lot of places that we ride are 10 pretty regularly, like 10 to 11 where we ride a lot.
Yeah. But so the Boost, just for those of you that don't know, just kind of slowing this down here, the Boost compensates for that. So with the turbocharger and with the amount of air that it can push through that engine, it's, as you go up in elevation, you're not at one point. So it's compensating and turning that boost up as you go up in elevation. So you're not losing all the power, basically. And then on the tuning side of things, you can tune them quite easily with guys like Vogue and make it where it's got way, way, way more power than a stock sled at elevation, obviously. So, or a stock Boost at elevation or whatever.
And
so,
to put that in numbers for you guys, they're claiming stock Boost is 180 horsepower. We're 180 horsepower at the trailhead, which is like 6,800, 7,000 foot for us. So we're at 180 horsepower there, and we have 180 horsepower clear all the way up.
Right.
Like, we're not losing
point.
any of that.
Yeah.
Whether we're at 8,000 foot or 10,000 foot or 12,000 foot, we're still 180 horsepower with the way they have it compensating. Now, to the 9R, to bullet point it.
Well, wait, what would you say before? What are the pros, or what are the cons of the Boost?
Cons of the Boost. Okay. Cons, I would say it's heavy. I don't love how heavy it is compared to an NA sled. So, just to rewind, you said it's light for the power, which I agree on the pros. Yep.
On the pros of the Boost, but it is heavier.
It is
overall.
Heavier. Yep.
Right.
I think so. Like, in order to get, and I should rephrase that, because it was in order for you, because we're looking at putting the tunes on them, for the amount of weight that Boost is, in order to put it to 220 horsepower, or you do the intercool kit and you're 280 horsepower, like, for that power to weight ratio, we can get so much more horsepower out of tuning that sled versus, the weight of what the turbo is.
Right.
Now, and that would be the con of it, is if you're going to keep that sled stock and not up the power on it, I feel like it is quite heavy for your jumping, your all around fatigue of wrestling it around through the trees, whatever that may be for the day. So I'd say just the weight, maybe the lacking of bottom end in certain situations when you want it to go, and if it isn't quite right there when you need it, which they've gotten a lot better, but there's still a little bit of lag there. And then
would you say reliability?
I wouldn't say reliability.
No.
I think these factory turbos are pretty good. I know last year the Boost had a lot of problems stock, and that's why we are doing the tunes and all that to avoid those problems, to where we just never have them. So, but trying to stay on a stock format talking about it, I would say maybe runability would be a little bit of a concern.
Because I know a lot of dudes with boosts that were having problems.
Yeah,
Det codes, max debts,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Talking from a stock standpoint and taking ourselves out of that situation, I would say that that's definitely a downfall to a con to it. I think. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. I mean, overall, I think a big con of the boost is if you're not a good rider on a boost, I think that it can hinder your progression as a rider because you just start to rely completely on the power and not fundamentals and momentum and stuff like that. I think for a beginner rider or even, an intermediate rider, I think that could be considered a con.
Yeah, and to dive into that a little bit, I'll tell my backstory on that. I came from the snowcross world. Yeah, I lived in Colorado my whole life. We didn't ride the mountains a ton. I raced on a track a lot. So that was something I thought when I came into the mountainside. I was like, well, I better have a turbo, or, I went with a supercharger and I had all the power in the world, but I didn't have the skills to ride in the mountain yet to use that power. So that sled just kind of threw me around and I didn't know how to use it. So I just rode a stock sled for the last 2-3 years and worked on those fundamentals and gained the skills on that stock sled to then now be ready to be riding a lot more power, riding a turbo. It's one of those things that is a con. If you are just trying to have a boost to be the most power in your group or be the most power of your buddies, your riding crew, whatever, like then it's not going to get you out of those situations.
I respect it because that's sweet, but at the same time,
exactly.
It can hinder your stuff.
No, you will thank yourself for riding a stock sled for a couple years and learning the true, ways to handle the snowmobile, I think.
Yeah. And I think, just real quick, going backwards a little bit, I think one of the things, before we do the pros and cons of the 9R, I think one of the things with the that we've talked about, if you're a guy that you want that low end, but you also want a lot of power on the 9R side of things, in my opinion, if you want a lot of power, I would rather take a boost and then put a tune on it that helps that low end, because that's kind of what you're going for if you're wanting a 9R, or most of the guys, that's what they're wanting. I think it makes more sense to go boost and then tune to get better low end and they're, clutching and stuff like that to get that low end than trying to go to a 9R and then gain more, top end power, I guess you'd call it. Because there's kits like, the SLP and twins and all that stuff. And it's like, that is a ton of money, in my opinion, for not a lot of power. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, you're putting $4,000 into it to gain
a couple horse,
like, maybe 14 horse total.
Yeah. Like, when you could tune a boost for way under $2,000 and be in it 40 more.
Yep.
40, not 14, but 40.
40. Yep. I just think for the cost effectiveness, riding elevation, you can't go wrong with a boost. I think that's the.
But it's interesting, and maybe it's just because of my style of riding. And I'm not saying this is our opinion. Again, This is our opinion. But I just don't quite understand at 10,000 feet in deep snow how, the tree riding guys are the ones that claim that the 9R is, the best move, or guys that just want that kind of low end, kind of that style of trees. I guess it's not always trees. Like, I know there's a ton of good riders that ride, some of the best riders in the world that run 9Rs, but where we are and the snow that we ride in the conditions that we ride, what I don't understand with some of these guys is why they like that 9R so much. I guess I just don't understand it because it's just not my style, I guess. But it's just like, why wouldn't you just get a boost and tune it and have that low end instead of doing all the stuff to a 9R and it's still not even close to a boost?
Yeah. And so for the math aspect of it, it's 3% per 1,000 a foot of elevation. So if you're losing 3% per 1,000 foot, and we're riding at 10,000 foot a lot, like 8 to 10,000 foot is our primary riding spot here, you're losing a substantial amount of power. I mean,
So you're saying 30% is gone?
Yeah. Yep. So 165 would be probably your normal stock. I don't know what a 900 is, but if we're doing an 850, I think they're around 165 horsepower. So that
At sea level.
Oh shoot, I don't know. What's the math on that?
165 times 0.3.
You're losing 50 horsepower.
Yeah.
On that.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
I don't know if that's
So
right or not.
if you're losing 50 horsepower on, a sled, that's pretty substantial.
That's a ton.
That's a lot. That makes a big, big difference.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so what would you say the pros are of the 9R?
Okay, so on a 9R, I feel like one of the major pros would be the lightness of it. And that would be one of the biggest things why I would go to it, is because I do like the jumping part. And I feel like all that weight of a boost pounding into the snow is just not good for the chassis. So I do like the light aspect of the 9R. I feel like you could lighten up the 9R and get your power to weight ratio probably a lot more nimble and fun with the 9R. Mm-hmm. And I guess you have to say the low end, like grunt of it, that initial bump, it's like engagement and a little bit that I notice on the 9R is like that. That's like, wow, okay, that's good right there. That's that feeling you get. But once you get into that mid and top power, I don't feel like it's as impressive as what.
It's not near as impressive.
It's
as
not a boost. Yeah. So I would say like the bottom end is your pro for it. What do you got for another pro on it?
I like the biggest pro to me is you can get it into 146 from the factory. Yeah. That's probably the biggest pro to me. That's the only reason I'd buy a 9R right now, just for my riding style. Again, I'm not downing the 9R. It's just I like the boost personally. I like the sounds of a boost too, but I think that the only way right now I would go with the 9R is if I really wanted a 146 from the factory.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I mean, if you really want it, because we're loving having 146 on low snow days and stuff like that, the 9R would be a blast 146 sled. So I'd say that's a pro for it, the 9R 146.
I guess you could say a pro is it's a little bit cheaper than a boost.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, dude. It's one of those things.
It's hard for us to be super positive on the 9R a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's just, and I'm not saying it's terrible. Again, I keep saying this, but it's just not for what we like to do where we ride.
And for somebody that might be in that, they want a little bit more because they feel like they're, a couple years into riding, or maybe they don't ride a ton. They want a little bit more power, but they don't really think they need a turbo, because there's a lot of people in the world that really don't need a turbo. Like, we probably don't really need a turbo, but
yeah, we do.
Yeah, maybe we do. Yeah. But, for those people that don't feel that, they're like, man, I don't know if I'm a turbo person, that 9R is a very good option for you, because it fills that void in the market of like, it's not a stock 850, it's not a turbo, it's a little bit more. And that is a void that, the 9R holds in, and that is a positive to it. Is it's a stepping stone for people that might be looking for a little bit more, but they don't want to lose their factory warranty. So they can get a 9R, have warranty, and then it might be a stepping stone to get to a boost if they continue going that way, or you might love just having that little extra.
Yeah. Another thing that I would say that kind of goes off that, if we're talking about low elevation riding, this is a whole different conversation. So I'd say that's a pro to the 9R. I think at lower elevations, it shines. The other thing that I would say, I think probably for most people riding it, you would be less fatigued by the end of the day than you would be on a boost. And people are like, well, who cares? Well, if you're riding one day a week, it doesn't really matter. But if you're riding back to back to back to back, it starts to set in. The other thing is, if you're out of shape or you're an older person that just doesn't want to be whipped around all day by the boost, that's a good, more linear power curve that's easier to deal with.
Yeah. And to get back to the cons thing, it's one of those things that you have to break it to your riding style.
Yeah, 100%.
We are talking about ours, but if I was to put it in, if I was somebody that was living in the UP and maybe traveling out here every once in a while,
that's a good point.
I would ride a 9R because in the UP, that 9R would be freaking awesome. But you would still have a little bit extra when you got out here in the mountains, and you would not want to be riding turbo sled in the UP, I don't think.
You wouldn't?
Probably not, I don't think.
I don't know. It'd be sweet.
But-
Boost 174.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, might as well.
You probably would get wedged between the trees, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I've never rode out there. I have no
Yeah.
idea what I'm talking about. But yeah,
So cons on it.
Cost.
I think that's my biggest one. Cost. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know if I have any more cons on the 9R other than like it's the cost that has me held up. I don't want to buy that sled because I don't think that for the money you get what you should.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is I feel, and I'm not bad mouthing Polaris here by any means. Obviously, we're Polaris fanboys. We're talking about them. But to me, it's kind of like a false marketing campaign in a sense, because it's like their marketing is the latest and greatest and it's so crazy and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's a good product, but like, let's be honest. The Boost, for what they're advertising, the Boost is a way better power plant for Chris Barrant and all those guys. And like, he likes a 9R and stuff because he does a lot of tree riding and whatever. But
he rides a Boost a lot of the days.
yeah, but a lot of the filming days, if you actually pay attention, and it's all these guys. They'll ride 9Rs, and then
You even see
when it's
Caleb,
deep-
he's riding a Boost a lot now
yeah,
too.
yeah. Oh yeah, 9R's the best. And then it's like, yeah, when it's like hard snow, they're riding the 9R. But then when they're going to film with Climb and Polaris and all those guys, where they're really trying to get after it.
Yep.
Here comes the turbos.
Yep.
So I don't know.
It's one of those evil necessaries. And that's why we each have two sleds, and I have chose to have, an NA and a Boost, because I feel like for those certain days you want the NA, but then there's a lot of those days. I mean, if we have a good winter, the Boost is going to get used a lot. If we have a bad winter, the NA is going to get used a lot. Like, it's going to be very substantial to the situation, I think.
Another thing that I think about, it's like the 9R would be a great addition to a fleet, if you had a Boost and then you got a 9R.
Yep.
But I go back and I'm like, dude, like realistically, even on a somewhat hard snow day, I still like Boost.
Huh. See, I'm different in that.
But
I don't.
It's like we just talked about.
Yeah.
We just talked about before this podcast, like different setups. I am 50 pounds heavier than AJ.
Yep.
Like that makes a big difference.
Huge difference, because
You know?
I mean, he, and I'm going to say a couple different things. He likes a 165 aspect because he can carry a lot of speed through deep days and get where he wants to. I can't ride a 165 to save my life. Like, it is awful.
I've never
for
owned
me.
a 165, but when I ride the 65,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
fun.
It carries a lot more speed for you.
Yeah.
But then, I can't ride it. The same aspect is like on the spring hard snow, like I don't feel like, I feel like the NA sled is plenty of enough for me. I don't need any more than that, but I am a lot lighter on this sled.
No, but the thing is, I don't necessarily think I need more.
Yeah.
I just have so much more fun with more, you know?
Yeah.
But
No.
there again, I didn't have an NA sled in my fleet, so it was kind of like you're riding a Boost no matter what kind of day it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. No,
But
and
yeah.
I think for the majority of the days that we try to ride with where we live being so close, we try to ride the deep days. I mean, if it's a crappy wind-blown day, it's kind of like, we'll just not go today.
Yeah, I don't want to take a day off to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of one of those things for us being so close that we're a little spoiled. But there's been winners, and that's why I went with a 146 last year. It was like the winter before that, I would have had way more fun on a 146 NA because it was bad low snow conditions for the whole winter.
Dude, I just can't fathom how much better you got last year being on an NA 146 in like a historically deep winter. I mean, it was unreal deep that last year.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he's here, just coming through on a little short track. I'm like, damn, dude, that's crazy.
No, and that's exactly like, I am so glad. Like, I would have loved to have a turbo last winter, but I'm also knowing, like, in the back of my head, like, I'm so glad I had a 146 NA last winter, because I improved probably more last year than I improved the two winters before that. And I feel like it was a pretty steep incline of improving those 2 years as it was. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, it's one of those things that I don't know. It's so situational.
But see,
So
that goes
situational.
back to like what we're kind of talking about here. You had a 146
Yep.
NA 850, not 9R.
Yep.
850. you got around perfectly fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah,
Like,
but the thing is we talk about the, oh God, the 9R doesn't have as much power as Boost and everything. It's just like, yes, it doesn't, but at the same time, you don't need either to like really shine.
no.
Like the most basic sleds that are out there now are so good that you can go do whatever you want on them, honestly.
It really is. And that's the only aspect that I didn't like about the 146 in A850 was it didn't pop out of the snow for cool pictures or cool videos or anything like that. It just kind of dug through. So that's the only thing that it didn't film great. It was fun to ride. I got around everywhere I needed to. I never had a day. I mean, there was days that the snow was literally handlebar deep and I still tracked it around everywhere with the 146. Like it was fine. It was
Like,
not
and
an 850.
a 165 Boost would have been better.
Oh, it would have been way better.
No, you don't need that.
You don't need that. And we don't need any of this stuff. And that's why
It's
we're
just fun.
debating the 9R Boost is like, you don't need either one. And if I had endless money, if I had $40,000 to throw every year, I would have a Boost and a 9R in the garage. I would.
Dude,
But
I just like Boost, dude. I don't know. I am heavier, but it's just like, dude, there's nothing like Boost, dude. There's just not. I don't believe that. I mean, it's like we could have gone, or I could have gone with like a 9R 146 this year.
Yep.
But it's like,
But you still didn't.
yeah, but it's like, dude, I just like Boost. Like that's just so much fun to be had when you have that much power.
Yep. I think once you can handle the Boost, I feel like you can never go back. Like
That's what I was going to say earlier, and I forgot to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
it
once
really
you
is.
do it, once you have that, you won't want to go back to that. And that's my biggest fear for this winter is like, I'm going to have that Boost and I'm probably going to ride it almost every single day.
Yeah.
And I probably won't even pull that other sled out until springtime for jumping.
Like spring.
Like we're talking like late March, early April.
Yeah, like we're riding mud up to the
Yeah. Like throw it in the bed of the truck to get to where we can unload. But
yeah, dude, I'm excited for this year. I think we can wrap it up there. We kind of rambled, but it's good.
No, and hopefully, I mean, we didn't blow a Boost too much for you guys, but that's definitely the way we trend and think we believe Boost. So
yeah, and it's elevation and snow conditions, honestly, and then just kind of our style. But I mean, we even have kind of a different style.
We do. We do, definitely.
And I think you can lean more towards a 9R than even I could.
Yeah, I lean way more towards it than you, I think. But yeah, it's still one of those things that the price just doesn't sway me. I can't bring myself to do it for the price. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it's a great sled. They're all great now.
They are all really good. And let us know what you guys think. Are we completely off the rocker here? What do you guys think? Are you guys full 9R people? Like what's...
I'm sure a lot of you are.
Yeah.
So hopefully this didn't piss you off too much.
Well, tell us in the comments. We want to hear it. Let us know.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just wanted to have a conversation, not like a super structured, bullet point talk. We kind of just want to have a conversation on our thoughts right off the cusp of 9R versus Boost. So there you have it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Tell us in the comments, and we will see you next week.
Let's Assess is out.
See ya.